At 60, her daughter used her as a free maid, so she walked out and built a business that made her rich. If you love stories about second chances, karma, and women who refuse to be taken for granted, make sure you like this video and subscribe to the channel so you never miss a story like this one. Now let's get into it. At 60 years old, May sat on the deck of her small coastal home, watching the waves roll in and out, feeling a kind of peace she had not known for a very long time. It had not always been this way. Just a few years earlier, her life had looked completely different, and there were many nights she wondered if things would ever get better. Until the age of 57, May had worked as a bookkeeper for a small local company. It was steady, comfortable work, the kind of job she had assumed would carry her all the way to retirement. She showed up on time every single day, kept the books balanced down to the penny, and took quiet pride in a job well done. She had watched co-workers come and go over the years, watched the company survive slow seasons and difficult stretches, and she had always believed her loyalty and reliability meant something. Then, without much warning, the company shut its doors for good. The owner called everyone into the break room one afternoon and explained, with a shaky voice, that rising costs and a shrinking client base meant they simply could not continue. May found herself unemployed for the first time in decades, standing in a parking lot with a small cardboard box of desk belongings, unsure of what came next. She applied for position after position, sending out resumes, sitting through interviews, doing everything she could to find steady work again. She updated her resume, took a short course on new accounting software just to stay current, and dressed carefully for every interview, determined to make a strong impression. But everywhere she turned, she ran into the same quiet, unspoken judgment. Interviewers glanced at the years listed on her resume, and their expressions shifted, polite but distant, as though they had already made up their minds before she finished speaking. She was told, directly or indirectly, that she was simply too old. Companies wanted someone younger, someone they assumed had more energy or more years left to give. May had plenty of energy and plenty of experience, and she could outwork most people half her age, but none of that seemed to matter to the people making the decisions. Month after month, the rejections piled up, each one chipping away a little more at her confidence. With her options running out, May leaned on what little she had saved and the small severance package from her old job. She knew it would not last long. Her apartment rent was far more than she could manage on a fixed and shrinking income, and eventually she had no choice but to give it up. Her daughter Julie, her only child, offered her a place to stay. On the surface, it seemed like a generous gesture. Julie and her husband Carl lived in a large house with several guest rooms sitting empty most of the year. But instead of offering one of those bright, comfortable rooms, Julie offered May the basement and told her it would cost $500 a month. May had no other option, so she accepted. The basement was cold, damp, and dim, with small windows near the ceiling that let in only a thin sliver of daylight. In the winter, the chill seemed to settle into her bones no matter how many blankets she piled on the bed. It was not a home. It was a place to survive. Not long after May moved in, Julie began adding conditions to the arrangement that had never been part of the original deal. She expected May to cook every meal for the household. She expected the laundry done, folded, and put away. She expected the entire house kept spotless, top to bottom, all while May paid rent for a damp, unfinished basement that barely qualified as livable space. May did everything asked of her. Dinner was always on the table on time. The laundry was always clean and folded. The house always sparkled. And no matter how much she did, it was never enough. Julie found something to criticize nearly every day, some small detail that wasn't quite right, some task that could have been done a little better. May began to feel less like a mother and more like unpaid help, invisible, except for the moments when something displeased her daughter. There were nights May lay awake in that cold, dark basement, staring at the ceiling, wondering how her life had shrunk down to this. She had spent decades working hard, raising her daughter, being responsible and dependable, and somehow she had ended up feeling like a burden in her own family's home. She thought often about the years she had spent putting Julie first, sacrificing, vacations and small pleasures so her daughter could have dance lessons, new clothes, a college fund. She had never once complained about those sacrifices, because that was what being a mother meant to her. But lying in that cold basement, listening to Julie and Carl laugh and talk upstairs in their warm, comfortable living room, May could not help but wonder when exactly she had stopped being a mother and started being staff. Some mornings she found it hard to even get out of bed, weighed down by a tiredness that had nothing to do with sleep. She missed her old apartment, small as it was. She missed feeling useful in a way that was appreciated rather than expected. She missed simply being May, instead of the woman in the basement who cooked and cleaned and never quite did enough. Then, on what felt like one of the lowest points in her life, everything began to change. May's best friend of over 20 years, a woman named June, invited her out for coffee, saying she had a proposal to discuss. May did not know what June had in mind, but she jumped at the chance simply to leave the house for an hour, to breathe fresh air and sit somewhere that did not feel like a basement. When May arrived at the small cafe downtown, June was already seated at their usual table, a warm smile on her face. May ordered her coffee and sat down, and June got straight to the point. She explained that she wanted to start a catering company, and she wanted May to be her business partner. She said May's cooking had always been extraordinary, ever since they were young women, and that people would pay good money for food that tasted the way May's did. May's heart lifted at the idea, but reality settled in quickly. She explained to June that she had no money to invest in a new business. She also explained her situation at Julie's house, how, if she stopped cooking and cleaning, her daughter would likely put her out on the street, and she had nowhere else to go. June smiled and told her that was the best part of the whole plan. She had already rented a building for the catering business, and upstairs there was a small, beautiful apartment that came with it. May could live there, keep every dollar of her own money for her own expenses, and finally stop paying rent just to be treated like hired help in her daughter's home. May did not hesitate. She said yes on the spot. That same afternoon, June drove May back to Julie's house to help her pack. The two of them moved quickly and quietly, carrying boxes and bags down from the basement, filling June's car with the entirety of May's life. Before they could finish, Julie and Carl arrived home from work. They noticed immediately that dinner was not on the table. They noticed the pile of dirty laundry still sitting by the washing machine untouched. Irritated, they marched to the basement door and demanded that May come upstairs immediately. May and June carried the last of the bags up the basement stairs together. June continued on to the car, giving May a moment to speak with her daughter, alone. May looked at Julie and Carl and told them plainly that she was leaving. She explained that she had a new job and a new apartment of her own, and that from this point forward, they were in charge of running their own household. Julie's face turned red with anger. She raised her voice, demanding to know who was going to cook and clean for them now, reminding May how much they had counted on her rent money every single month. May looked at her daughter, calm and steady, and told her that they could hire a cook and a maid if they needed one, or they could clean up after themselves like everyone else. She said she did not particularly care which option they chose. Then, she turned, walked out the front door, and did not look back. The new catering business took off almost immediately. Word spread quickly about the quality of the food, and requests started pouring in for weddings, corporate events, birthday parties, and holiday gatherings. May and June worked side by side, doing what they loved, finally building something that was entirely their own. Within 2 years, the business had grown so successful that a larger company offered to buy them out, and the two women accepted a deal that set them both up for the rest of their lives. With the money from the sale, May was finally able to retire, in comfort. She bought a small house on the coast, close enough to hear the ocean from her porch every morning. June sold her own home shortly after, and moved in with her, and the two friends settled into a quiet, peaceful life together. They still took on small catering jobs here and there, simply because they enjoyed the work and loved seeing people's faces light up over a good meal. But most days, their time finally belonged to them. Sitting on that deck at 60 years old, watching the waves roll gently onto the shore, May thought about how far she had come. From a cold, damp basement where she was treated like hired help, to a life she had built entirely on her own terms, surrounded by someone who genuinely valued her. Life, at last, was good. If this story reminded you of someone in your own life, or if it gave you a little hope that it is never too late for things to change, let me know in the comments. And if you want more stories like this one, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss what comes next. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next story.